Welcome to TetraTypes In Depth, a series for source-led explorations of ideas around socionics. This episode begins with an awkward question. When two people use the same word, have they exchanged the same information? Grigory Reinin's 2000 essay, Knowledge and Information, argues that the answer is not automatically yes. A message can cross a room without noise, travel through a perfect technical channel, and still acquire a different meaning in the mind that receives it. That matters for socionics. We often speak of information metabolism as though information were already there, ready to be sorted by a type. Reinin asks us to look one step earlier. What makes anything show up as information at all? What background of concepts, habits, language, memory, and expectation gives a form its meaning? His answer is philosophical, not a laboratory result. Yet it supplies a useful discipline for typology. Before explaining how a person processes information, ask what world has made that information visible. The source is Grigory Reinin's Russian language article, Knowledge and Information, published in 2000 in Socionics, Mentology, and Personality Psychology. Reinin is widely known in English-speaking socionics for the derived dichotomies bearing his name. This essay is doing something different. It moves through information theory, psychology, language, and several spiritual and philosophical traditions. Its central concern is not a new type table. That boundary needs to stay visible. Reinin's vocabulary of an unlimited field of knowledge, a human conductor, and the virtual character of perceived reality is his philosophical framework. TetraTypes does not present it as established neuroscience, standard Model A doctrine, or a proof of any mystical claim. The interest lies elsewhere. He offers a sharp critique of the easy computer analogy. A computer can interpret a formal language because its rules are standardized. Human beings never begin with rules so completely shared. The consequence is modest but important. Meaning depends on more than the signal. It depends on the world that meets it. Reinin begins from the familiar modern picture of information. Messages can be encoded, stored, measured, and transmitted. A bit can tell us something about the cost of carrying a signal. It cannot tell us what that signal becomes for a particular person. Take a simple sentence. The meeting has moved. Technically, it is a small string of words. In practice, it may mean relief, a broken promise, an opening for preparation, a threat to a deadline, or nothing at all. The message has not changed. Its significance has. Reinin's point is not that measurement is useless. Quantitative information theory works remarkably well in the domains for which it was designed. His challenge is to the slide, from a theory of signals to a theory of human understanding. Humans do not receive a pure stream of meaning. They recognize forms through concepts they already possess. What counts as relevant, alarming, trivial, familiar, or even real is shaped before the message reaches conscious interpretation. To make that move, Reinin separates two ideas that are often collapsed: a description of the world and a picture of the world. The picture is the concrete reality a person experiences, what they see, hear, feel, and think in a situation. The description is the underlying set of distinctions through which objects, relations, and events can be recognized at all. It is the vocabulary and conceptual grid by which the world becomes articulable. This is close to a familiar psychological thought. Perception is never entirely raw. We notice through learned categories, expectations, and practices. Reinin states the point radically. If a distinction has no place in a person's description of the world, it cannot simply announce itself as an object in that person's experience. That is an interpretive claim, not a license for solipsism. The useful lesson is practical. Before assuming that someone has ignored an obvious fact, ask whether the fact was obvious within their available description of the situation. Reinin gives this description a center. Every person, he says, selects and coordinates a world from somewhere, from a point of view. This does not mean that the world is invented at will. It means that any object is picked out against a field by a particular act of attention. The same room contains noise, furniture, status, history, risks, opportunities, and sensory conditions. No single observer takes all of it as their operative reality. For Reinin, a world description is therefore a coordination grid. It marks what counts as an object, which differences matter, and which relationships can be named. This is where the essay becomes relevant to typing. A type model may tell us something about recurring priorities in attention. It should not be confused with the whole coordination grid of a person. Family, language, education, profession, trauma, political setting, and personal history all enter that grid. Socionics can be one lens on attention. It is never the entire world through which someone sees. Reinin then proposes his most unusual definition. Information is not just data waiting outside us, it is knowledge that has taken a form. The phrase matters because form is shareable while meaning is not automatically shared. A word, diagram, gesture, or statistic can travel between people. Its significance is filled in by a receiver whose world description may overlap with the sender's, diverge from it, or lack the needed distinctions entirely. The metaphysical language around this proposal belongs to Reinin's own framework, and viewers need not accept it. The more durable insight is simpler. Transmission carries forms. Understanding requires a context that can make those forms meaningful. That lets us describe a common failure without blaming either person for stupidity or bad faith. Two people can use the same categories, agree on a sentence, and still inhabit different conceptual volumes inside its key words. In that sense, communication is not the delivery of a finished object. It is an attempted alignment of worlds. Reinin develops 5 properties of this human information process: correspondence, boundedness, virtuality, the emptiness of form, and illusion. Correspondence means that perception follows the available description. Boundedness means that any description has limits. It includes some distinctions and excludes others. Virtuality means that many different descriptions can organize experience differently. The emptiness of form means that a form has no fixed significance before someone gives it content. Illusion means that a coherent experienced world is not thereby the one final description of reality. These claims are strongest when read as philosophical prompts. They do not show that all interpretations are equally good. Evidence, consequences, and mutual correction still matter, nor do they show that there is no world beyond interpretation. What they do show is why disagreement persists after the facts appear to have been exchanged. Often the dispute is not about a missing datum, it is about the background categories that decide what the datum is allowed to mean. Reinin's account of communication follows directly. A sender can transmit a message flawlessly, and a receiver can understand every individual word, yet the message can still change meaning. Why? Because a message brings with it more than its visible sentence. It presupposes a whole network of concepts, contrasts, shared histories, and assumptions about what matters. The receiver supplies a different network. Think of an expert saying that a result is robust. In one setting, that means a statistical property. In another, it means physically sturdy. In a third, it is merely praise. No technical fault occurred. The form arrived. The conceptual background did not. Reinin compares this with computer languages, where interpretation can be standardized in advance. Human language is not like that. Its rules are lived across overlapping communities rather than fully fixed once and for all. The conclusion is not despair about communication. It is a demand for better practice. Make background assumptions visible, not just the final assertion. Translation makes Reinin's point vivid. A translator may render each word accurately and still fail to carry the conceptual field in which a phrase worked. This is not a narrated English translation. Translation needs notes, terminology, decisions, and uncertainty, where a Russian philosophical term has no neat English equivalent. Otherwise, English can conceal the very gap the essay teaches us to notice. A clinical example suffices. Your test was negative can reassure a clinician and alarm a patient. The words have not changed. The shared practice that gives them their operational meaning has. Reinin's vocabulary examples make a related point, but their numerical claims need checking. So I do not rely on them here. This does not make languages incommensurable. It shows why translation should surface its decisions rather than quietly pretend every term arrives intact. This applies to socionics too. Terms such as information, aspect, value, energy, and type have traveled through Russian, Ukrainian, Lithuanian, English, and Internet subcultures. Treating them as self-identical is often the beginning of confusion. What does this add to socionics? It corrects a tempting simplification. Information metabolism is often explained as if the information elements were 8 ready-made kinds of content that everybody encounters in the same form. Reinin's essay asks us to see a prior layer. A person does not meet content without a world description, language and history that disclose some features while leaving others backgrounded. This does not overturn Model A. It is a TetraTypes interpretive extension around its use. A Model A position can describe a structural role in a type model. It cannot, by itself, tell us the complete meaning of a person's words, the social practice that trained their attention, or the world they are trying to preserve. That makes typing more demanding. A visible preference may reflect type, training, local convention, role, stress, or a borrowed vocabulary. Good interpretation has to distinguish these possibilities rather than treating every repeated phrase as direct evidence of an element. There is also a limit that Reinin's own argument helps us state. If a world description is shaped by culture, education, life events, and social membership, then it cannot be reduced to sociotype. The temptation is familiar. A type description offers a compelling pattern, and soon every difference in language, politics, taste, or spiritual outlook is made to serve the type. Reinin gives us a reason to resist that move. These are parts of the grid through which a person meets the world, but they are not interchangeable. Type may organize recurrent orientations. It does not contain a complete biography. It cannot tell us which words a person learned to trust, what institutions taught them to notice, or what losses made one question more urgent than another. This is not an anti-typology conclusion. It is a standard for typology. The model should compress a pattern without claiming ownership of every source of meaning in a life. Reinin's practical proposal is a discipline of second-order attention. Do not only look at the picture someone presents. Ask what description makes that picture possible. In a typing interview, this changes the questions. Rather than asking whether a person enjoys ideas, structure, comfort, or efficiency, listen for the distinctions they spontaneously make. What has to be true before a problem becomes a problem? What difference do they treat as decisive? What form of evidence settles an uncertainty for them, and what form fails to register? The answer still requires context. One interview cannot reveal a world description, much less a type. But the practice is stronger than matching a sentence to a glossary entry. It lets us separate a visible word from the role that word plays within someone's understanding. For translation, teaching, and dialogue, the same discipline applies. State the frame. Define the term. Ask what is being assumed. The aim is not perfect fusion of perspectives. It is fewer, invisible substitutions. Reinin's knowledge and information leaves us with a useful reversal. We usually imagine that information comes first and interpretation follows. His essay asks us to see that interpretation has already helped constitute what counts as information. A form becomes meaningful only within a world that can receive it. That claim is philosophical, its metaphysical language is contestable, and its strongest formulations should not be mistaken for a settled psychology of perception. But it gives Socionics a valuable warning. A type theory can describe recurring structures of attention without replacing the cultural, historical, linguistic, and personal world through which attention operates. For TetraTypes, the lesson is simple. Keep the form, but ask for the world. When a person uses a Socionics term, do not assume the word has arrived with a single, fixed meaning. Ask what distinction it carries for them, what it excludes, and what shared practice made it intelligible. That is not a retreat from theory. It is a demand that theory notice the conditions under which it becomes meaningful.